Akira and Kencho went to an abandoned watch store due to the zombie pandemic that had already spread. There, they were searching for watches that they had found difficult to afford while still working in their respective companies. At that moment, he was amazed to see a watch on display that had been coated with gold. When he looked at the price, Akira could only gape because if he had bought it before the zombie outbreak, he might not have been able to survive with the remaining money he had. Kencho called out to Akira because there was a display of watches that were priced even 10 times higher than the one Akira had seen earlier. Without much hesitation, they took the watches that were still inside the store and took a selfie, proudly showcasing the available watches. As the evening approached, Akira's face showed his dislike for the rather complicated situation. Their supply of clean water had completely run out, and even using backup batteries to operate the water pump required a significant amount of power, which could disrupt the already scarce electricity supply. Kencho also looked at his smartphone, which could no longer receive a signal because the power supply in Tokyo was no longer functioning. This made them realize that they had to leave immediately because their stocks of food, electricity, and water were completely depleted. Akira, who had already planned to return to his hometown in Gunma, invited Kencho to join him. In the morning, they had already packed their belongings to head to Gunma. Kencho prepared the supplies that would be useful during the journey, but Akira, on the other hand, brought items that were unnecessary and even deemed as non-essential. Since they were on top of the apartment where Akira rented his room, before leaving Tokyo, he took a moment to stop by his room to bid farewell to all the memories he had acquired in Tokyo. Then they set off for Gunma using Akira's motorcycle. Kencho asked what they would be looking for during the journey, assuming it might be food sources, water, or anything else useful. Akira expressed his desire for a camping van equipped with a kitchen, a toilet, and at least some protection from zombies at night, which could also serve as their travel companion on the way to Gunma. Upon arriving at the car showroom, they coincidentally met Shizuka, who, unexpectedly, had the same goal of finding a camping van. Akira believed that this encounter with Shizuka was truly fate, as they had now crossed paths 3 times in unexpected places. Without much thought, Akira invited Shizuka to go to Gunma together. However, she flatly refused as she did not want to get involved in an unfavorable situation by joining them. Akira was shocked to hear this rejection, and Shizuka and Kencho simply walked into the car showroom without him. Akira began to follow them, feeling weak after hearing the rejection. According to Shizuka, using a camping van in this situation would be very useful and serve as their primary means of travel while searching for help, based on what she had seen in zombie movies. Kencho couldn't believe that someone like Shizuka would use zombie movies as a basis for survival. Unfortunately, it seemed that Shizuka couldn't drive a car and didn't even have a driver's license. So they had to persuade her to come along to avoid the unforeseeable consequences if she insisted on going alone. Whether she liked it or not, Shizuka had to join them because her calculations had gone astray this time, and she didn't want to meet a foolish end by forcing herself to go alone. Akira and Kencho were ecstatic as they gazed upon numerous camping vans of all kinds lined up in the showroom hall, leaving them bewildered about which one to choose. While they were thoroughly enjoying the process of selecting a van, Shizuka was considering which vehicle they could take. Assuming it should be rugged, versatile, and capable of running for an extended period without worrying about servicing or anything else. However, Akira had his eyes on a luxurious camping van that he wanted to use as their mobile home. Still, Shizuka clearly rejected Akira's choice because it was too extravagant and inefficient, unable to handle various terrains. She recommended using a rugged 4x4 vehicle, which was promptly rejected by both of them. In their selection process, they prioritized the van's utility for sleeping inside it during the night. As they looked around, Shizuka was drawn to a classic camping van that greatly appealed to her because the interior installed inside the van resembled a 5-star hotel in Bali. This led Akira and Kencho to tease Shizuka for her lack of consistency with her previous stance. Suddenly, a horde of zombies had surrounded the showroom area, forcing them to quickly choose a vehicle to use. After getting inside the van, Kencho made sure Akira checked whether the van's keys were there or not. Akira, already prepared to drive, stepped on the gas and left the showroom area, hastily heading towards Gunma. Their journey to Gunma had begun, and Akira felt that being on the deserted roads was quite strange. He had grown accustomed to the traffic congestion before the zombie outbreak. In fact, he found it eerie to drive without the usual hustle and bustle of vehicles passing by. Shizuka, who shared the same feeling, mentioned that logically the world was not yet doomed if someone could develop a vaccine to counter the zombie pandemic. However, it was possible that the person working on finding the vaccine was in another part of the world. Since it was impossible to search for that person, they should consider themselves fortunate if they could avoid zombies and survive. As the day grew late, Kensho, who was riding Akira's motorcycle, predicted that they were getting closer to Gunma once they had left Saitama. Feeling hungry and in need of rest, Akira suggested stopping at the nearest rest area to stock up on food supplies and take a short break. However, they encountered a spike strip placed in front of them, causing the tires of both the car and the motorcycle to burst. This resulted in Kensho being thrown off the motorcycle and sustaining significant injuries. In this dire situation, they had no choice but to seek help from someone along the highway. On the other hand, a group of buses had blocked their path, and it turned out to be a group of survivors who had taken control of the rest area, led by none other than Akira's former workplace superior, Kasugi-san. He was shocked by the trauma and suffering caused by his former boss. He recalled the terrible days of his past, filled with exhaustion and emotional drain due to the pressure from Kasugi. The days were like being in hell, with no proper rest, an overwhelming workload, and unreasonable deadlines. However, as there seemed to be no other option at that moment, and with Kensho injured, Akira reluctantly asked for Kasugi's help to save Kensho. He agreed to assist Kasugi for 2 days at the rest area they now controlled. Akira imagined that the work there might not be as demanding as his previous job at the company. However, to his surprise, the nightmarish work conditions he had experienced in the past were repeating themselves. And Akira, unprepared for this, had to comply with Kasugi's demands to save Kensho. On the other hand, Shizuka took care of Kensho by cleaning his wound and applying a bandage to his injured body. Kensho, groaning in pain, felt regretful that he couldn't help Akira avoid his incredibly annoying former boss. Especially in his current condition, it was difficult for him to face Kasugi's troops armed with baseball bats. Shizuka hoped Akira could complete his 2-day task so that it wouldn't continue and he wouldn't be swayed by Kasugi's toxic words that made her furious. Akira's first day of work was exhausting. He was tasked with carrying food supplies, drinks, and essential emergency supplies. When he saw his fellow workers, they appeared tired but not complaining, resigned to the dreadful situation they were in because they couldn't do much to protect themselves. Akira felt like he had returned to the darkness that had haunted him during his 3 years of working. He didn't know what to do and couldn't help anyone, only able to work there and feel trapped in a tense situation where even zombies were used as tools to push trucks. When Akira moved a pile of seemingly fresh beer, he took the initiative to make the refrigerator run and cool the beer. However, this angered Kasugi greatly because Akira used electricity as he pleased, just to chill the beer. On the other hand, when Kasugi's subordinates saw Akira cooling the beer, they were delighted because Akira had a brilliant idea by utilizing the available electricity. Kasugi, who didn't want to reveal his true nature to his subordinates, immediately put on a facade of being a good person since Akira used to be his colleague in the same office. He had no choice but to maintain this facade as long as his subordinates didn't leave the area. Frustrated by Kasugi's incessant nagging that tortured his psyche, Akira could only resign himself and listen to Kasugi's anger as his actions disrupted the remaining electricity supply. On the other hand, Kensho was infuriated by Akira's change in attitude just because he had encountered his former boss. Shizuka had to explain to Kensho that she couldn't forget her deep-seated fear, especially when, in the past, she had experienced something similar herself.